Wisconsin Eye's 2014 election coverage is brought to you by the Wisconsin Hospital Association. For over 90 years, a valued voice for Wisconsin hospitals, supporting high-quality, high-value care in communities like yours.
Wisconsin Eye coverage of the 2014 elections continues. We're interviewing Devin LeMahieu. He's from Oostburg. He's a Republican candidate, in the 9th Senate District. Devin, welcome to Wisconsin Eye.
Thank you very much for having me.
A programming note, Wisconsin Eye appreciates the support of the Wisconsin Hospital Association, which represents more than 139 hospitals and health systems, for making these candidate interviews possible. So the last name's kind of familiar because your dad was in the Assembly. How many terms, Devin?
He was in the Assembly for 12 years, for 6 terms.
Years. This is your first interview with Wisconsin Eye, so give us the short version of your background and what you do and any other office that you've held, sir.
Sure. I live in Oostburg. I'm running for the 9th Senate District. I own and operate and publish a small paper in southeastern Sheboygan County called the Lakeshore Weekly with a circulation of 4,600. I've been doing that for the last 12 years. And I'm also on the Sheboygan County Board. I serve on the Sheboygan County Board. I've done that for the last 8 years. I am the chairman of the Human Resource Committee, served on the Executive and Finance Committees, currently on the Finance Committee. So we have a great track record in Sheboygan County of holding the line and reducing taxes and providing great services for our constituents.
When I interview candidates for either the Assembly or the Senate who do have a local office, I'd like to ask this question. Impact of Act 10 on their local services, sir?
Right. Act 10 saved us millions of dollars for Sheboygan County taxpayers. It's not just in the pension contributions and the health insurance. We were actually pretty close to the 12.5% already with our employees in Sheboygan County, but it's just being able to make scheduling changes, changes in the way we operate that had been in contracts for years and years, which we couldn't change because they were in a contract. So it gave us greater flexibility to serve the needs of the community. So it was definitely a much needed piece of legislation, which has served the public well.
And the 9th Senate District is an open seat. Any one issue that brought you into the race, Devin?
Well, after Senator Leibum decided not to run again, I was excited to get into the race. I think over the last 4 years, the governor and the legislature, with the leadership of Senator Leibum and Senator Grothman from our area, have made great strides in turning the state around. They took a $3.6 billion deficit, turned it into a $1 billion surplus, 100,000 jobs created, over 17,000 businesses created in the state of Wisconsin, and that's the direction I want to see the state keep moving in. So I felt it was important to have someone step up and run for the office who takes the kind of mindset to keep our state moving in that direction, to run for that position.
Let's talk about some specific issues. If you represent the 9th Senate District and it comes time to vote on the next school aid package, what are your priorities for the next package of state aid to public schools?
School aid, school funding is one of the two major things that state government does. Is schools and infrastructure, the two important things. So it's very important to take a close look at how that school aid works. Over the current biennium budget, we've seen increases of $150 per pupil in each of the years. So I think historically we've made a strong commitment towards education, which is important for the future, and we need to make sure that we keep that going. A strong education is the foundation of a great state. Right now we are number 2 in ACT scores in the nation, and that's something we need to keep moving forward with Wisconsin. A
big issue in that debate is the future of school choice and vouchers. There's now a 1,000 enrollment cap statewide on choice slots. Do you think that cap should be lifted? Devin, excuse me.
I do think the governor just came out this week and said it should be lifted, and I support the governor. We've seen the success of some of the voucher schools in the Milwaukee and Racine area, and I think for low-income families statewide, if they're in a failing, it's just too important to let children stay in failing schools. They need to be given the opportunity. Parents know what's best for their kids. They need to have that option to be able to provide the best opportunity for them to succeed in life. So I definitely support the expansion of the voucher system, or giving parents essentially control and options. So especially underprivileged families that can't necessarily afford all the options.
This summer, the governor also asked both the Senate and the Assembly to join in withdrawing from the Common Core program. Your position on that, sir?
Yeah, I was glad to see the governor take that stand. The Common Core standards were developed outside of the state of Wisconsin by unelected bureaucrats, and it was put in place by the superintendent of DPI. And we need standards that are Wisconsin-based. We need strong, rigorous standards to make sure that we remain one of the top education formats in the country. And we need the input of administrators, of principals, of school boards, and most importantly the parents at the local level to make sure that we're developing Wisconsin-specific, rigorous standards to make sure our kids have the best chance to succeed in the world.
Transportation funding, the Wisconsin Taxpayers Alliance has said if we keep funding transportation at the 2013 level for the next 10 years, we're going to have a deficit of $2 billion.
Right.
Do you think we'll have a deficit? And if so, what are your thoughts on how that deficit should be made up?
I think, first of all, there's an important vote in November outside of the 9th Senate District in the governor's race, and that vote is there's a constitutional amendment to make sure that transportation funding isn't rated, stays in that segregated fund. So I think that's foremost is important to make sure that money that goes into the transportation fund is kept there and spent on transportation, because transportation is one of the two main and important aspects that the state deals with. Right now we have fantastic roads in Wisconsin. It's important to keep it that way for our tourists and to enjoy the beautiful state that we have, and also for businesses to make sure they can transport goods around the state. So if there is a shortfall, it's obviously important that we need to deal with that, but we'll see what happens. But most importantly, just to make sure that money that goes into the transportation fund stays in there and is used for transportation. It sort of reminds me of when I was relatively new on the Sheboygan County Board. After a couple of years, we had a couple good budgets, and then we had a couple bleak forecasts coming in the future, and people thought we needed to add a sales tax, another source of revenue, because locally the cost of roads were getting expensive to build, and health insurance costs were rising, and I led the fight to defeat that. I said, no, we need to make sure we are making tougher decisions elsewhere to streamline, and we beat down the sales tax idea, and it's been 5 years since then, and we've held the line pretty well by making some tough decisions and working together. Would
you consider raising either the gas tax or the $75 you and I pay to register our vehicles?
We'll have to see how each of those areas might impact the economy, but all options, we need to make sure we do what's right for Wisconsin to make the roads well.
Okay. Healthcare. 1 in 5 Wisconsin residents get their health care through the Medicaid program. Mm-hmm. The American Hospital Association says our reimbursement rate for Medicaid is second lowest. If you've studied the issue, do you have a position on whether we can afford to raise those reimbursement rates?
That's something that will need to be looked at in the next budget, because what happens when that's underfunded? I mean, someone has to pay that bill. That bill is then cost shifted to the private sector, so that's an added expense for businesses who are providing health insurance, for small business owners like me who are paying for our own health insurance. So we need to make sure we get that right, because that money is going to be paid by someone. So that's definitely an area that we can look at.
There was a bill introduced last session, and it will be reintroduced this session. It would legalize medical marijuana. Now that travels, of course, with the experiences in Colorado, state of Washington, right, legalizing recreational marijuana. Right. Your position on both those issues?
I am opposed to both those issues. With the medical marijuana, I think there needs to be more studying done. We just don't know enough about the benefits versus the side effects and how it might be abused by some people, and I definitely don't want it to be used as a gateway towards legalizing marijuana. We have enough problem with substance abuse in society, and we certainly don't need to make another addictive drug more available.
As you know, we're the only state that treats first offense drunken driving. It's not a crime. It's a citation. Should it be a crime?
Drunken driving is a real problem in Wisconsin and across the country, but specifically here. And we need to do everything we can to reduce drunken driving fatalities and accidents. So we need to make sure that we're dealing with that problem. But I don't think the root cause of the problem is with first offense. There's definitely a stiff penalty already. I believe the fines average around $1,200. Once you factor in insurance costs and attorney fees, it runs around $10,000. And people just simply don't repeat. After the vast majority don't repeat. The real problem is with the habitual drunk drivers, and we need to make sure that we, as a legal system and as a state, come down hard on those people and make sure they understand that that's unacceptable.
One of the first bills passed last session made it possible for potentially Gogebic taconite to apply to open that mine in Iron and Ashland counties. Right. If you were in the Senate, would you have voted for it?
I would have voted for that. I think that was a great piece of legislation. The economy is fragile all over the place, but especially in northern Wisconsin. People are leaving there because it's such a depressed economy up there, and this bill gives Wisconsin hope. They want jobs up there. They need jobs up there. These are good-paying jobs. And what that bill did was it changed the process and procedure. It didn't change the standards. So that way a mine knows that there's going to be a deadline on the permitting process. They still have to comply to EPA standards, DNR standards, the Army Corps of Engineers. So it's going to be done safe. I enjoy the lakes of Wisconsin and the cleanness and the beautiful scenery up north in Wisconsin. I'm a biker. I love to go up there and just enjoy the nature up there. So definitely we need to make sure that's protected, and this bill does nothing to make sure. I mean, it still has all those protections in place. It just gives a deadline to make sure that a company who wants to invest in Wisconsin and help us develop our vast resources can have an answer at some point. And our neighbors, Minnesota, Michigan, they're already doing that. And we have mining heritage, our miners on their flags. So So yes, I definitely support that piece of legislation.
Frac sand mining is a huge issue in western Wisconsin, not necessarily Senate
Right.
District 9, but
Right.
let me ask this question. Do you think state government should enact standards and no local government should go beyond it in the ability to regulate these sand mines, or do you think local government should have the ultimate power?
With the development of frac sanding, that's exciting for the state. I understand we have some of the best frac sand in the world in Wisconsin, so I think that's really exciting for the state. I think it's with a new industry, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But I think it's fair to have some sort of standard in the state, just to make sure that everything is being done to. I mean, the DNR will oversee it, the EPA will oversee it, so we'll make sure that it's done to protect the environment and not harm it.
Okay, just a couple of final questions. Is there any central issue in your campaign that I haven't asked you about yet that you want to highlight now?
Well, I think the central issue that I've seen out, our campaign has knocked on over 17,000 doors already, and what we're seeing is it's the economy. I mean, people understand that we've turned around. The business community understands. 4 years ago, 10% of the business community thought Wisconsin was headed in the right direction. Now it's 94%. So that's the main focus. People realize that the economy has turned around, but it's still very fragile, and we need to keep moving Wisconsin forward and keep having opportunities for job growth and family sustaining, supporting incomes, like some of the great businesses in the 9th Senate District, like Walrath and Kohler and Sargento and the Manitowoc Company, to make sure those companies have a place to stay and grow and use the many talented people that we have in Wisconsin here.
And then finally, I want to give you a chance, if you choose to highlight differences between you and your Democratic opponent on November 4.
Sure. I think there are some pretty stark differences. I have the experience of balancing budgets, being a public servant, dealing with the taxpayers' trust and money, and I've worked across the aisle. On a county board, we're nonpartisan on county board, so we're working with 25 different people's opinions, and we need to work together to find compromises, and we've done that very successfully in Sheboygan County over the last 8 years by reducing taxes in 4 of those 8 years. And we're working with people who, from conservative to liberal, who represent rural to more urban areas like Sheboygan. So, that's a level of experience that I'd bring to the 9th Senate District of actually finding solutions and streamlining government. And as a small business owner, I understand the challenges that's the backbone of the state is a small business. So I think that gives me that experience there. So there's going to be a marked difference between controlling taxes and smaller government.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Devin LeMahieu, of Oostburg, is a Republican candidate in the 9th Senate District. Devin, thanks for talking to Wisconsin Eye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.